Welcome back, confirmands, and thanks for joining me again as we continue our way through the third petition of the Lord's Prayer, Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And if you remember, we've been talking about God's will, and we had the first session talking about a maze and some of the obstacles that kind of get in our way of understanding and following God's will, things like Satan and our sinful flesh and the world. And we remembered that God is stronger than all of those and that he provides a way of escape, and that way is Jesus, the way and the truth and the life. And in our last session, we talked about what God's will is, that God's will for us is actually pretty simple. It's for us to love him, to love God, and to love and serve others as well. So with those two things in mind, we're going to take a look now at this next part. And remember that while God's will is sovereign in our lives, that means it's all ruling. He invites us to be partners with him in his work and his purposes in the world. So that's what we're going to talk about today. As always, you need your catechism and you need your Bible to help work through your workbook, and you also need your workbook. And in fact, go ahead and turn to page 144 because that's where we're going to start for today. And if you take a look in your workbook on page 144, it asks you to think of 2 or 3 decisions that you've had to make today. So I had decisions like what I was going to eat for breakfast, or if I was going to eat breakfast, or what I was going to wear. It was a Sunday, so I didn't really have much choice. It was going to be the collar. And then how I was going to get to work. Now, a little bit further down the page, there are some big decisions you got to make in life. Like, are you going to go to college? Or are you going to get married? Who are you going to marry? What are you going to do for the rest of your life? Are you going to have a family? Are you going to travel the world, right? Those questions may seem easy or hard for you to answer. I don't know. But it does lead to a deeper question and a more important question that jumps out to us at the middle of page 144. Question is this: how do you know when you're following God's will? And as a pastor and as a friend, I've had a lot of people ask me this question in a lot of different ways, and they want to know if one choice is better than another, or if one choice is more aligned with God's will than the other. Or maybe they want to know if God wants them to choose one path instead of another. How do you think you'd answer that question? How would you tell someone that they are not following God's will? Well, in your catechism, question 265 and 265 and 266 actually give some good guidelines for how to think about this, about God's will. So here's question 265 in your catechism. What is God's will for my life? God wants me to become and remain his child through faith in Jesus, and to live as his adopted child according to his word and bear witness to Christ, to resist the devil and all that would prevent these things. So those are pretty good guidelines. What does God want? Well, he wants us to become and remain his child through faith in Jesus, right? And to live then according to his word by loving others, and to resist the devil and all those things. So it's pretty basic. That's it, right? So what does that mean for you as you think about what to eat or what to wear or what to do after high school or who to marry or those kind of things? Actually, questions 266 and 267 really are really helpful for that. You can take a look and you can read those with your parents because I think they're really, really good. But they're reminders there that we can take comfort in the fact that God gives us some good boundaries to live by. Think of the 10 Commandments. And as long as we're not breaking those boundaries, he gives us the freedom to make all kinds of wonderful decisions, right? And he gives us each different gifts to enjoy along the way and to use and to bless others with. And also, we know that we're going to mess up and we're not going to do things the way they should be done, but God will continue to work through our decisions, even really bad decisions, and to bring good from them because he loves us as his own dear children. There's a wonderful example of that in the Bible. Joseph and his brothers. Do you remember that story? That Joseph's brothers get jealous, and what do they decide to do? They decide to actually throw Joseph into a pit and then sell him into slavery. But do you remember how the story ends? Joseph, through a long and kind of winding road, ends up second to Pharaoh in Egypt and ends up saving all of Egypt from a famine, and not just all of Egypt, but he ends up saving his brothers from the famine too. And in the end, Joseph says, what you intended for evil, God worked for good. God's will is done on earth as it is in heaven. So with these guidelines in mind, we don't have to worry or stress over our decisions if they will or will not please God. As long as we stay in these boundaries, he is a good and gracious God who will continue to work in us and through us, whatever they may be, to accomplish his purposes and his will. And that's pretty awesome. So with that, remember to write down any questions you might have or comments, and we can talk about that coming up this Sunday. Hope we'll have a good discussion. See you then.